So what I want to do is I want to dive into a concept now where we're looking at knowing our numbers better. And I know you said this was not your strength, Dee, so I'm glad you're getting a little bit of what we're going to do here, even if it's not all of it. And ultimately, it's so important in anything we do in life. We need to know the numbers to know whether we're winning or losing. And I liken it to in entrepreneurial happiness. I tell a story of when an American friend of mine came over from the States, and we went and watched a game of cricket. Now, for any of you that are cricket fans, you'll understand that there is quite a lot of complexity in cricket. There's all the different positions on the field, which have funny names. But when my American mate sat down and he's like kind of beer in hand, right, ready to watch. And by the way, I watched a game of baseball last year. For any American that ever takes the piss out of cricket ever again, oh God, is baseball dull? So dull. It's like cricket, but they only make contact with the ball every other over. It's just anyway. So my American friend sits down. He's got his beer, about to bowl the first ball, and he sees the scoreboard at the cricket ground. This is at Trent Bridge, and he's like, "Oh my God, what the hell is that?" You know, and you can see a cricket scoreboard. It's got all sorts on it, hasn't it? It's got the number of runs that were scored, the number of overs that have bowled, who's bowling, first innings, second innings, number of wickets, who's the batsman that's facing. There's dots indicating certain things next to certain people. You're like, oh my God, there is just too much complexity there. And it occurred to me that, you know, ultimately, if you can't read the scoreboard, you don't know who's winning or losing. And exactly the same applies in business. If you don't know what's going on with the numbers in your business, you don't know whether you're winning or you're losing at the game of business. And ultimately, that's what we're all in. Whether you kind of a partner in a firm and you run a department, or whether you run your own business, it's absolutely vital that you know the key numbers within that business. Sorry, Alex. It's absolutely vital that you know the key numbers. And the problem is there is so many numbers nowadays that it's often difficult to know what numbers you should be tracking. And Claire and I talk about this on the Triathlon podcast a little bit. There is so much data out there in the triathlon world, because, you know, these things on our wrist track everything. They track the temperature at the time that you did your exercise. They track your sleep, your heart rate variability, and then you throw in an extra gadget that tracks your sleep and your body temperature and resting heart rate and all of that sort of stuff. There's so much data out there that you just can't get your head around all of it. And actually, when I was training for my first Ironman, I was introduced to a piece of software called Training Peaks. And Training Peaks seemed like a level of complexity that was beyond what I needed. But actually, when it became really apparent that it was a simplifier, it wasn't making it more complex. Because what it did was it took all of that data that was going on in the background, and it basically gave me 3 numbers. It gave me a number to say, this is my fitness score, and that is not a percentage, in case you thought I was really on fire at the moment. So that CTL fitness score is a reflection on your the exercise you've done over the last 42 days. It gives you your fatigue. So had you had to burn lots of matches to get to that point? And then it gives you your form, which is ultimately your fitness minus your fatigue. But those 3 numbers become incredibly powerful when you're trying to prepare for something like an Ironman, because you've got to do a whole shed load of training to get yourself to a position where you're capable, you think you're capable of doing an Ironman, because you can't do an Ironman in training. So you actually have to know from the numbers that you're in the right position to be able to do it in advance. And so Training Peaks just gave me 3 really simple numbers to focus on. Am I too high on fatigue? Have I overdone it and I'm going to burn out? Is my fitness going to get up to? And the reason that it became really easy for me was one of the guys I trained with had been to the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii 11 times. So he seems to know what he's doing. And he said, if you can get to a CTL of 100, you should be about in the right position to do an Ironman. So, right, okay. That just makes it really easy. Very slow. I talked in a previous workshop about setting SMART goals. Right, SMART goals, CTL of 100 or more. by this date, and then by race day, fatigue needs to be down below this number and form above this number. And so it just gives you really easy things to track. And it's said that, I can't remember which book I heard it said in recently, but there is safety in numbers. And it's obviously that's a term that's used for something different. But in business, there is so much safety in numbers, and we need to think about what that looks like. Because ultimately, what data gives us, it allows you to be very much smarter about the goals that you set. It allows you to measure whether you're succeeding in what you're doing, and it also allows you to celebrate more. You actually know when you've succeeded. And one of the other things it allows you to do is it allows you to target the areas that specifically matter. So, for example, when we were interviewing Jackie Herring on the podcast, she actually swims. She's a professional triathlete. She swims a lot less than most of the triathletes out there, but she's a full-time. Well, she's a professional triathlete, but she's a mum of 2, 3, can't remember, so she knows that her time is limited and she knows that therefore, if she trains, she can't train as much as the full-time pros can. But the amount of time she will lose by not training on the swimming anything like as much as the others is a fraction to what it would be if it was on the bike. The bike is where you spend the most time in an Ironman or in a triathlon. So the most gains are there to be made on the bike and the run. So she swims less than I do in a week, but she is a professional triathlete because she knows that the gains are there. And that's what giving you kind of diving into the numbers really gives you the power to do. I don't know have any of you seen Sir Clive Woodward speak? Brilliant speaker. And if you ever get the chance, definitely worth listening to. But he introduced one of the things he did early on in his England coaching days was he introduced a thing called Prozone. Prozone was he was the first rugby coach to introduce it, that little block that sits on the back of their neck. Arsenal football, so Arsene Wenger introduced it to Arsenal at a very similar time. So Clive Woodward did it for the England rugby team. In fact, he tells a really funny story about Will Greenwood, and for those of you that know Will Greenwood, he's a bit of a clown. And the first game with Prozone, and Will Greenwood keeps when the ball's dead, Will Greenwood keeps running up and down the sort of across the pitch. He's like, Clive Woods was like, he must be trying to run off an injury or something. There's something weird going on with Will Greenwood. Anyway, so he asked him afterwards what was going on. He said, I just wanted to be top of the leaderboard in the Prozone stats, the most steps and most yardage covered. But Sir Clive Woodward put that data down to the success. That was a fundamental part of the success why they won the Rugby World Cup. And in fact, nowadays you only have to look at any professional sport, whether it's football or rugby or whatever, and they've got all the data live in front of them, haven't they? So it is incredibly powerful, and it's absolutely vital that you have this within your business or department of business, because I think it's one of the key tools to being able to delegate more and spend less time in the business while still having your finger on the pulse of the business. And the way that we always did that is at Efficient Portfolio, and in all of the businesses that I now run or have a share in, is we run the success, what we call the Successful Business Scorecard. A Successful Business Scorecard, it's all tracked on a weekly basis. You'll see there's quite a lot of numbers there, but it's bunched into groups. You don't need to look at what those numbers are particularly or what particular categories they are. But ultimately, it becomes very simple for me to go along that line every week and go, right, these are we've set these targets for each of these different areas of the business. And are we hitting those targets? So I always described our business as being like a sausage machine. Basically, it's a process, isn't it? You meet a potential client that you get introduced, whether it's through a referral, whether it's through social media, whatever it is. You need to move them through the sausage machine, and gradually they become a client. They're on an ongoing fee structure, retainer basis, whatever it is, and they've moved the entire length of the sausage machine. And it's very easy in business, isn't it, to get, super busy with one part of that process. Oh, we've got loads of clients that are all in this stage. We spend all this time talking to clients at this stage, and then you realize that there's nothing coming the front of the sausage machine, or there's clients left out, there's issues further down the production line. So having a business scorecard is one of the most powerful tools in business, because what it allows you to do as a business owner is to have a complete pulse on what's going on, which ultimately then allows you to spend less time in the business, because it frees you up to go, okay, I can see everything's going according to plan, or actually I could see these are the two areas that really need some thought. One of the other principles when you read about this is, so Google adopted these types of systems very successfully. And one of the things that Training Peaks makes really easy is that so this is the same Training Peaks software that I showed you a minute ago. It's just the weekly plan. So that's a training plan for a random week. Green meant that I did exactly as I was told. Orange meant I did it, but not quite as I was told. And red meant I didn't do it at all. But it's really simple. And when we were interviewing a guy called Leon Chevalier, who actually I was sitting next to on the flight back from Kona chatting to him, and we got him on the podcast, he just said it's really simple. The coach tells me what I need. He puts the program in. I just need to turn everything green. That is all I think about, is the coach knows what he's doing. I just focus on turning everything green. And it's exactly the same principle as Google use. Google use a system called OKRs, which is this is the Silicon Valley version of this concept, but very, very simple. Very smart goals written down, very specific numbers, and then it's just basically, right, is it green, i.e. yes, it's on track? Is it amber? It's not going perfectly, but it's not going disastrously either. Or is it red, and is it really it needs attention? And if you can use this goal setting, and for example, Matt, we've worked on setting your business scorecard up and getting it really kind of easier to look into, haven't we? But actually, I think one of the things that we could take it onto another level with is thinking about, well, okay, how can we make it really obvious? Green, red, amber. How can we make these stats really key and stand out? And often in business, it's quite difficult to work out how you can kind of numericize a particular concept. So, for example, in customer service, like how can you make that into a measurable number? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do it. One is you can have a client survey, and and that can just you can have just a score from that. There's also a system called the Net Promoter Score. I don't know if do Roy Thorns use Net Promoter Score? You do? Okay, I thought you might, because it's quite popular in the Vistage circle. So again, Net Promoter Score, great way of just having a number to go. Are we getting better or are we getting worse? It's the Net Promoter Score from a law firm to a web design business. It's very difficult to compare that. But if it's the Net Promoter Score in your business, are we getting better? Are we getting worse? Are we hitting the target that we've set ourselves? You can do the same with your team as well. Again, because of the Vistage Connection Gallup 12 questions, I'm guessing you might have encountered those at Roy Thorns, maybe? No? Oh, okay. So a great way of seeing how the team are working and how happy they are what's called Gallup 12. It's 12 questions. You ask them regularly. Again, that brings out a score where you can continually see whether your team are gradually getting happier or less happy. So, and then you can have very simple, right? We want this target. It's green if it's this, it's amber if it's between here and here, and it's red below here. And then just having a simple line where you can look along each week and go, right, these are the areas that we need to focus on is incredibly powerful. One of the other ways that you can know your numbers better is a concept that's talked about in CEO Tools, which is a book by Jim Canfield. And I found that this is a brilliant, a lot of people struggle with numbers when they see numbers, particularly with like a scorecard, which is why just green, amber, red, it makes it really simple. But one of the best ways that you can kind of bypass an issue with numbers is charts. And the best charting that I've found in business is the 12-month trailing chart. So when you look at, for example, the profitability of a business, you'll often have seasons, won't you? Like probably December is a bit of December for some businesses is a rubbish month because everyone's getting drunk at the Christmas party. For other businesses, it's like, I really want to get this done before Christmas, therefore it's a big month. Again, for financial planning businesses, the tax year end has an impact on that. The summer is always a bit rubbish in business, unless of course you run a surfing company, and then it's probably really good. So seasonal variations affect the business quite a lot. And we found that one of the most powerful ways of tracking income versus expenditure, i.e. profit, was that 12-month trailing chart. Because what it does is it takes all of those seasonal variations out, and it just shows you, right, is this, if that's income and that's expenditure, and i.e. this is profit, where are we gradually getting more and more profitable as a business? Or, for example, are we turning over lots more money, but actually we're spending way more money and our profitability is going down? And it allows you to see trends much more clearly. You can use this for any part of the business as well. Yes, Natasha.
Is this done retrospectively, or does it project as well into the future?
I don't know how you would project it into the future. It's retrospectively, but essentially what you're doing is you're constantly taking 12 months back from where you are today. But it doesn't have to be. What it does do is allows you to see trends. Like, for example, if you see this opening up, you go, oh, okay, great, that's good. That goes back right the way back to 2014. So that's a lot of data there. But you can do that with, for example, so you could do that with leads, for example. Are we gradually getting more and more leads? And then you could also compare that with, so we always describe the first client-facing part of our process as the expiration meeting. So if you mapped the expiration meetings with the leads, you go, well, we might be getting double the amount of leads we were this time last year, but if we're not getting any more expiration meetings, now we have a conversion issue. It's really powerful. CEO Tools 2.0, it's not one of the best business books I've read, but if you want to learn more about that particular concept, it's the only book I've ever read that in, and I think it's just a really brilliant indicator of what's going on in the business or department. One of the other things about knowing your numbers is it allows you to control the controllables. And that's something that, again, gets talked about on our podcast a lot. Michaeli Jones, who's was an amazing Ironman, she won Ironman Hawaii, but she also won a silver Olympic medal. She talks about control the controllables a lot. And she gave us one example where she started the triathlon, so she got into the swim, and her bike still was stuck somewhere in an airport. So she had no bike. But she was like, well, I can't control that. I have a team. My sister and brother-in-law have got the task of trying to get me a bike into transition. I'm just setting off for my swim, not knowing whether there's going to be a bike there at the end of it. They got her a bike there. She went and won the race. But she was focused on controlling the controllables, whereas, just thinking about that would just stress me out so much that you're thinking about the uncontrollables. But again, knowing the numbers and seeing the numbers in front of you is one of the ways that you can control those controllables. And I think I'm trying to think how many were in the last workshop that we did, where we talked about phenomenal process. I think you were, Claire, weren't you? You and Tesh, you guys were. So one of the key things about understanding which numbers you should be looking at is really understanding your process, your client journey. So one of the things that we did in the last workshop was design the client journey, and we call it the phenomenal process. But it's essentially when we look at the journey that the client takes right from the time that we meet them how do they work through to ultimately ending up at where we want them to end up. So we had the efficient wealth management process, which started with the financial breakthrough call, which was a conversation over the phone that led into the exploration meeting, which I just mentioned. Then we built them a financial plan. Then we did the planning meeting, an implementation meeting that came with that, and then the progressive review program was how we ensured that their financial planning continued to evolve with them. And by knowing this process, and by the way, for what we are in the process of doing is building a portal for the trusted team. So members of the trusted team will get access to all the previous talks that we've done. So that is all recorded, and we can direct you back to that in due course. But understanding that client journey is really important to then understanding the numbers that you need to know, because at every point in that journey, you need to have at least one number going, right, okay, is that still moving forward? Because that's the way you need to kind of monitor the sausage machine. It's that early warning system. You know, if you're doing loads of planning meetings, it's great because you think, gee, you know, I'm hitting all of these targets, I'm doing an amazing job, we're having the best quarter ever. But if you're doing none of these, the quarter after that is totally dead.